Israel. This is Brother Stefano from WFI Trinidad. Right, come back as always with some precepts. Right, today we're just going to talk about the tension between the U.S. and Venezuela. What's going on in Trinidad. What tension is the U.S. stirring up in Trinidad, right? And Salakia for the lateness of this video, right? But all praises to the Most High that this video is going out. Right, before I start, I like to give honor and glory to Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, right, for this truth, for the mercy, for the wisdom, right. So, as everybody should know, is so-called Donald Trump, right, or the U.S. is trying to say that Venezuela and Maduro is guilty of making America filthy, polluted with drugs. That's why it has a lot of crime with drugs and illegal stuff. That basically Venezuela is disturbing America from being great again, right? So Trump is here to make America great, and he's here to get rid of Maduro because he's responsible for some of the things what's going on to pollute America, right?
I don't think so, but they've been treating us very badly, not only on drugs. They've dumped hundreds of thousands of people into our country that we didn't want. People from prisons, they emptied their prisons into our country. They also, if you take a look, they emptied their mental institutions and their insane asylums into the United States of America.
Right, so he's blaming, Venezuela for a lot of things that's happening in America, right? A lot of suffering, a lot of disasters, and all these other stuff, right? And if you think that this man is just here trying to make America great again by just getting rid of drug cartels and all these things, you're going off, right? Because it's not about these drug men. It's not about making America great again. It's really about control, right? And him just being a devil, right? Now you could have points on Trump kind of trying to control the South America region. You could have points on Trump trying to destroy Venezuela's economy, right? Because Venezuela has natural resources, and he's trying to control that, and Venezuela has goals. He's trying to control that, right? You could have a lot of points, which we wouldn't deny, which could be true about why he's doing this, but we know that it's based on control, right? So this is the book of Psalm 110 and verse 111 and verse 10. So it says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. A good understanding have all they that do his commandments. His praise endured forever. Right? So you really have to be, keeping yourself, keeping the commandments, and being in the wisdom of Yahweh Hashem Yahushai to see, the deceptive and craftiness of Esau, in these last days. Right? And also too to understand what's really going on. Because they really have a lot of people out here, especially in Trinidad, thinking that, hey, everything's okay. He's just doing a joint exercise down here with Trinidad and all these other stuff, right? So yeah, so you have a lot of people thinking these things, right? But it's not that, right? So if he says he's not on war, and he's just trying to make America great again, right? Then what's all of this going on here in the Caribbean, right? U.S. warship arrives in Trinidad and Tobago near Venezuela. A U.S. warship arrived in Trinidad and Tobago on Sunday for joint exercises near the coast of Venezuela as Washington ratcheted up pressure on drug traffickers and Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro, right? So if he's not on war, then what's all of this going on, right? What's all of this, right? Now they say that it's just for a joint exercise and all these other stuff for the men of Trinidad and Tobago, and the Caribbean and CARICOM, just a joint exercise. Then where's all of this, right? Why is the B1 and B2 stealth bomber, right, flying, close to Venezuela time to time? Where's all of this, right? So, you really can't be deceived, by these men saying that, well, yeah, we here for peace. It's just an exercise, right? That is like, you have a neighbor, people is out for him, right? And you just bring people in your home with weapons and, all these other stuff and say, well, hey, don't worry yourself. This is not for you. I'm just doing an exercise home by me, and all these other stuff, right? That's madness, right? So there are claims that this ship, right, not this, but this has came here to Trinidad before for a joint exercise, right? But don't be deceived by why it's here now, right? It's here just in case things go wrong, right? And that's it, right? Because they are really causing a lot of tension and conflict, right? Um, between Trinidad, Venezuela, right? It's just one set of tension, right? So let's go to the book of First Thessalonians, right? Salakia, right? First Thessalonians 5, right? Salakia 10. So, right, so can right? So this is the book of First Thessalonians 5 and verse 3, right? Salakia. So it says, for when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction come upon them as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. Right? So when they say, peace and safety, I'm not after war and all these other stuff, I'm just in the name of peace. That's when sudden destruction you know comes. And also too, you have Salakia, them sending a lot of military stuff here in Trinidad. Let me just play the video, Salakia. Right, and you have a lot of people here in Trinidad literally panicking, right? Because when you really dive into it, a lot of people here in the Caribbean, right, or a lot of third world countries, they never really seen a jet close up, these things close up and all these other stuff, right? They never really seen war, right, and the full aspect of how it could be, right? So you have a lot of Trinidadians literally panicking, wondering what's going on, like, is all of this going, what is all of this happening, right? And I believe last week Friday you had like a big alarm going on because there was a talk that Trump was going to launch a strike on Venezuela, right? Because last week Friday, I was seeing a lot of people worried. A lot of people was like, what's going on? You have a lot of people leaving Port of Spain early, right? Teachers going home, people in the gas station, people trying to buy food because you can never tell what's happening, right? Let me see. Salakia. See that? That's right. 4,500 get orders to report for duty. Defense fort put on level 1 alert. Right? So you had a lot of people um, worried about this. Now they put out an article saying, this is fake news and all the other stuff. But there are videos out there of, these men, getting ready, right? So how it could be, so-called fake news, and you have videos of these men traveling in buses and vehicles and police escort and all these other stuff, right? So you have a lot of tension literally going on here in the Caribbean, right? And a lot of people never seen this, and I myself, I'm not ashamed to say, I haven't seen this up close. I have not seen this up close. I have not seen a jet up close, right? So think about for the rest of people who here in the Caribbean, they have not seen a lot of these things up close. So you have a lot of people panicking, right? So these men say that they're here for peace and they're just doing a military exercise and all of these other things, but they have war in their heart, right? This is the book of Psalms 120 and verse 6, right? Salakia, right? So yeah, I just have a lot of tension here going on here in Trinidad, right? So let me just get the book of Psalms 120 and verse 6, right? Okay. So this is Psalms 120 and verse 6. So it says, my soul had long dwelt with him that hated peace. I am for peace, but when I speak, they are for war. Right? So you have a lot of people here in Trinidad and Tobago who are for peace, right? And who speaking for peace. And but when these men talk, they have war in their heart, right? And also, you have a lot of tension between the people of Trinidad and Tobago and the Prime Minister, right? A lot of people are regretting that they Salakia, right? A lot of people are regretting that they voted for the Prime Minister Kamala Prasad Bisasa, right? Because for election time, you had people saying, yeah, yellow is the code. We're voting for this lady. We fed up at the past government and all these other things. But now you have a lot of people, right? Especially a lot of Israelites who foolishly voted for this woman because of promises, and it wasn't even no heavy promise. It was small promises like, I will put $200 on your pay, right? I will um let your rent go down by 2% or something. Just a lot of promises that these people voted for this woman. Now you have a lot of people upset because this woman is literally in support and is giving the US full authority. Yeah, yeah, come here, do what you want, make America great, right? I support you because at the end of the day, Venezuela is helping, with guns and TNT and all this other stuff. So she is in full support 100%, right? And not only full support 100%, right? She's being prideful about it, right? She's boasting and say, yes, yes, get rid of the so-called drug lord. So Salakia, right? Right? So you literally have a lot of people upset, right? And also too, because of how she's behaving, you have Venezuela cutting deals that they had with Trinidad, such as the Dragon gas deal, right? So, Slovakia, I have it pulled up here, right? So you had a Dragon gas deal with Venezuela, right? So it says the Dragon gas deal is a long-term project for exporting natural gas from the offshore Dragon field in Venezuela to Trinidad and Tobago, primarily for use in Trinidad liquefied natural gas, right? So you had this deal because Trinidad, needs gas, right? And there's a lot on the coast of Venezuela, right? So the deal was for Trinidad to extract, and Venezuela would get something too. Now, this deal was up from before with the last government, right? But because of, once again, America, you know, um, interjecting, right? It didn't go through. But now, because of how she is behaving, Slovakia, right? You have Venezuela literally saying, they are suspending the deal, right? See that? Venezuela suspends Trinidad and Tobago gas accord over U.S. warship visit, right? So She literally has, America just bringing all the machinery and ships here and so long story short, the way how she's acting, right? She's letting Trinidad and Tobago lose out on certain opportunities that could so-called benefit the people, right? So you have a lot of people upset, right? Because this deal could have helped the nation, right? So you have a lot of people upset about this. A lot of people saying, she's foolish. I have a lot of people literally saying yellow is no more the code, right? So right, can right, and a lot of people once again wondering why she's acting like this. Why is she in support of Trump coming down here? Sorry, the USA coming down here and bringing the machinery, um, bombing up boats that are so-called drug cartels and all these other stuff, right? It's because America is that great whore that sits on every nation, right? So basically, America is literally sitting on Trinidad and Tobago, right? And she's in subjection of whatever this man says, right? She's in 100% support, right? This is the book of Revelation, chapter 17 and verse 1, right? Quick precept. So this is Revelation 17 and verse 1. So it says, "And there came one of the seven angels which had the seven vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will shew unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters." Right? So America is this whore that sitteth upon many waters, right? Let's jump down to verse 15. "And he said unto me, The waters which thou sawest were the sorry, Salakia, let me read that again, right? "And he said unto me, The waters which thou sawest were the whore sitteth, where the whore sitteth are people and multitudes and nations and tongues." Right? So Trump is literally sitting on this woman, right? Because she is in full support, right? Salaki, I tried to pull it up. Kamala, that's right. Kamala Trinidad in support of the US, right? So she is in full support of the US being here, right? She's happy that Trump is sending fleets to come down here to clean up not only the US but the Caribbean from drug cartels, because Trinidad has a major problem in crime, right? Every day is a murder. Every day, two people, three people, right? So she's happy. Now, what's also happening too is that she feels betrayed as to CARICOM not supporting her into why Slovakia. She's not too happy with CARICOM not supporting her, bringing the US and the military machines and all of these things, right? So basically, CARICOM is not for the US being down here, because why, right? The rest of the Caribbean has seen what this man, right, has done in Iran, the war with Russia, Ukraine, um, Palestine, Israel, right? So the Caribbean is literally a don't bring this man here, right? We are not in support of you, right? You are in support of this man. We are not in support of you, right? Because why, right? The CARICOM is trying to portray this zone of peace, right? So I have some information pull up here, right? So it says the CARICOM zone of peace, right? A principle and recent declaration affirming the Caribbean as a region free from conflict. See that? right? So this woman is going against what CARICOM stands for, right? And they are no longer in, sorry, they are, Salakia, not in support of her actions. So because of that, she's saying that CARICOM no longer a reliable partner. So she feels betrayed, and she's planning to, Salakia, let me just read some of this article, right? Prime Minister Kamala Persad Bissessa announced yesterday that Trinidad and Tobago will be realigning its foreign policy, right? So she's trying to look for help elsewhere because she feels like if CARICOM can't support her um, in, you know, her allowing America to come down here and do whatever they want, right? Then how will they support us in the future, right? So she's trying to look for new partners and all the other stuff, and look for help elsewhere and all the other stuff, right? And there was a talk that she will tax these other Caribbean islands heavily, right? Because of what's really going on, right? So you have a lot of tension going on here, right? And a lot of people are saying, how could she do this? Because we need, as Caribbean islands, we need each other to survive, right? Although we are declared a so-called independent nation, we need each other to survive, right? We aren't producing all of the stuff in the world, right? So like I'll just use a random example, so Trinidad might um have water, right? So they would ship that to the other Caribbean islands, and let's say Barbados might have wheat. I'm just using a random example. So um, you know, so so we need each other to survive, right? So this woman is upset, right? Because once again, the CARICOM is seeing what the US is doing just down in the Caribbean, just bombing up whatever ship is a so-called drug cartels. And let me tell you something, half of these boats, what they so-called bombing, aren't really confirmed that it's drug cartel. They're just saying, well, these are drugs, drugs, yeah, bomb up, bomb, right? So CARICOM does not want this in, in the Caribbean, and she shouldn't want this neither. But it's all prophecy, right? The world is going to collapse, right? We know this is the time at the end. It's all prophecy wise, so all of this has to happen, right? So these men say that it's not war, but then again they're causing one set of tension here in Trinidad and in the Caribbean, right? So can let me see what else I have, right? So it says Trump Maduro's days are numbered, right? So once again, right, he says that he's not for war, right? But then again, he's saying Maduro, your days are numbered. While there are people who hate Maduro, right, and yeah, wish he wasn't a leader, right? There are people who love Maduro, right? So Venezuela isn't just going to sit down and let you remove Maduro from power, right? That's more tension. And what a lot of people don't know is Trump is basically trying to use Trinidad, right? As so okay, let me see if I can get it on a map, right? Right, Trump is just basically trying to use Trinidad as an outlet for war, right? Because why? Right, it's right there close to Venezuela, right? It's right there close to Venezuela. So if anything happen, right, this can attack here, and all the tension will be between 1 2 1 2, right? So that's what's basically going on, right? So and this could be real bad for the Caribbean because the Caribbean heavily depends on tourism, right? So what's going to happen if tension and war breaks out, right? There will be no more crews, right? Less people on flights, planes won't come here, right? and all these other stuff, right? And that will affect the Caribbean, right, economically, and all these other stuff, right? This is why, Slovakia, these other islands are not in support of what she is doing, and what she is supporting, and all these other stuff. So basically, you just have a lot of tension and a lot of madness going on here in you know, the Caribbean, basically, right? So let me just close off with a precept, Salakia, right? So let me just get the book of Revelation, chapter 3 and verse 5, right? Um, it wasn't going to be a very, very long, informative lesson, but Lord's willing, the lesson was informative, right? So just wanted to touch on some things that was happening here in Trinidad in regards to tension with the U.S. and everything, right? So it says, Revelation 3 and verse 5, it says, He that overcometh, the same shall be clothed in white raiment, and I will not blot out his name out of the book of life, but I will confess his name before my Father and before his angels. Right? So what brothers had to do is basically, look out, because times and more tension is coming, because people literally did not expect, right, that he was going to, bring all this drama to the Caribbean. I have a lot of people down here in Trinidad and Tobago thinking, well, if war breaks out in the Middle East or in the North, in the West, they are safe, right? But this is the Lord is literally stirring up things to show you that, you know, His hand could meet anyway, right? So that's why Scripture says, Jacob's trouble is really going to be a time that the earth never seen before, right? So with that, I hope it was informative on what's really going on here. So brothers, continue to pray, endure, brothers and sisters, continue to pray, endure, right, and to withstand all this wickedness that's happening on the earth, right? So hopefully it was edifying, right? So shalom, Israel.